feminist retelling of the Mahabharat in the Mr. Kuru's Return of the Mahabharat. And this is her sequel to this very, very popular book. I'm sure a lot of you have read it, Ms Draupadi Kuru, After the Pandavas. I just finished reading both of them, and they're really, really fun and light and so exciting. So as you know, in the first book, the women had the adventure of a lifetime, you know and this is the sequel in which we see actually the Pandavas also. They come to earth, and you know what, life is never the same again. So let's get into both these books. So you know a little bit about the author Trisha Das. She has an exciting body of work, which of course includes the Mahabharata Re-imagined, Kama's Last Sutra. She's also the writer of the internationally acclaimed How to Write a Documentary Script, and has written and directed over 40 documentaries in her filmmaking career. Wow, 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 40 documentaries. She doesn't even look old enough to do so many. So first, a very, very warm welcome, Trisha, to Sipping Thoughts.
Thank you very much, Sukirti. Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited, and I'd like to get to know you a little bit better before we get into the books. So are we ready? I'm going to do a little rapid fire with you, 5 quick questions, and we would love some quick answers. So we know who is Trisha.
Absolutely.
So, all right, I'm going to get started. So who's funnier, you or your brother Veer Das?
I don't know. I guess that's for you guys to decide, right? The audience and the reader.
Draupadi or Kunti, the stronger woman?
Ooh, I think Draupadi is stronger, but Kunti is smarter.
Ooh, very interesting. Change the past or see the future?
Oh gosh. Changing the past is really dicey, so I'd rather see the future.
Twitter or Instagram?
I want to say neither, but Instagram if I really had to choose.
And for you, on a cold, dreary night, a movie, a book, or a documentary?
Oh boy. I would have to say stories. Just stories, no matter where I get them from.
Wow, that was quick. And I think that gave us a little bit of insight about you. And I'm so excited to talk to you about both your books. And, they are really, really fun, very simple, very easy reads. But I want to start off the question with your book is being quoted as a feminist retelling. So I must ask this question. Are you a feminist? And what is feminism to you?
I'm absolutely a feminist, yes. And I think in our country, feminism is often misunderstood and misconstrued as some sort of aggressive, women who are trying to take over the world and that sort of thing. I think for me, feminism is a much more basic thing. So I believe that a woman who has a choice in what she wants to do with her life and is offered a level playing field in whatever opportunities she wants to pursue, that is feminism for me. So it's not, if a woman wants to stay at home and bring up children and not work, or a woman wants to take over the corporate world, or a woman wants to be an artist or whatever, as long as she has the opportunity and she has the stage to do so.
Very nice. And we see those glimpses actually come across also in your books. So your book, let's get into that, the modern Mahabharat, the Mahabharat Re-imagined. What gave you this idea for a book? And especially about Draupadi and her friends coming to earth. And I think a lot of people will say that that book was in itself so much. Why did you feel that you needed to tell the sequel also, the Pandav side of the tale?
Oh, well, let me start by saying that obviously I'm a huge fan of the Mahabharata. I've read it. I've read all the interpretations. I've read the translations, etc. And I really sort of feel bonded in a way to it, in a sense that I don't feel bonded towards, other stories. So I love the Mahabharata. I love the fact that it's so gray. What I hate about the Mahabharata, however, is how women have been treated in it. And so I guess Draupadi is the most visible woman in the Mahabharata. So you automatically, when you look into it, you see and can identify her as, I don't want to call her a victim, but she is victimized and she is persecuted in so many ways. And she kind of wears her various labels. She fights against them a lot, and she's a very strong woman as well. I think I wanted to see myself in Draupadi, as I'm sure every other Indian woman wants to see herself in Draupadi. However, I didn't, for the simple fact that I felt that women in the Mahabharata are persecuted for wanting agency, for wanting choices, and no more so than Draupadi. Draupadi was the one that really kind of stood out and tried and got punished for it repeatedly. So I guess my point of view was, what if I brought these women down to earth and was able to give them a sort of second chance at life, and all the opportunities that you and me have as modern women, what would they do with those choices? And that was just an interesting thing to me, and I thought it might be interesting to other people as well. As far as the sequel goes, I really wanted to. I wanted to tell the women's story, but then when you kind of go into the Mahabharata, you realize that the men didn't really have much of a choice either. So you have the five Pandavas who have been brought up in a particular way, educated in a particular way by their family members, to take over a kingdom, and that sort of became their life's mission, you know. And they were very much grouped together all the time. Not really given much of an individual identity outside of what they could contribute towards their cause. So I thought it would be interesting again to kind of give the men an opportunity in a modern world which is dealing with things like feminism and that sort of thing, and see how the men would react to it. After all, these are our heroes, right? How would they react if they were faced with a Draupadi who didn't want to be married to them anymore? Stuff like that, you know.
And I agree with you. I also have had a total fascination with Draupadi, and I'm guilty. I've been obsessed with her since I read The Palace of Illusions, you know. So that was the
Yep.
first time I actually saw a different light, a different way, and possibly things could have been very, very different.
Yes.
And another theme that does come out is, how did you go about your research? Because I know that you have a deep love of epics, you've grown up with them, but you also get slammed a little bit on your take of the Mahabharata because people say, okay, is it very accurate?
I think everybody gets slammed, frankly, when they try and interpret the Mahabharata. And especially these days, you know, you've got the cancel culture and all of that stuff going on. So no matter what you say, you're going to be slammed. But as far as research goes, I'm a huge fan of Palace of Illusions as well. Also, Yajaseni by Pratibha Ray, which was translated into English. So I've kind of grown up being influenced by these books as well. I think for me, however, the first translation I ever read was by K.M. Ganguly. That's the older one. And I read that a few times, and I kind of, uh, so that became my, I guess, my foundation for learning the Mahabharata and studying it. And then also, obviously, out of papers and articles and that sort of thing. So I guess KM Ganguly would have been my starting point, and then from there I kind of took away the bhakti aspect of it and tried to look at these characters as humans, as individuals, and sort of trying to figure out what was said in the translation about each of them as individuals, and try to character profile them and to make them into well-rounded characters, you know, with all the shades of black, white, and gray, without any kind of the religious aspect attached to it. So that was mostly my research. A lot of thinking, basically.
Yeah, no, but it's very difficult to get into that neutral zone. I can definitely think about that. And a lot of your characters, even the books are very simply written, are incredibly complex, and especially Yudhishthir. How did you think about him? Because, and who is your favorite character? Because I find him extremely complex because he's one of the most difficult people to understand why his actions, why he did what he did.
I think all of us are a little angry at Yudhishthir, right? I mean, when we read the Mahabharata and we're like, you got invited to the game, you lost the game, you gave away all of that, then they let you go. But then you had to, knowing what happened the first time, you still went back. And all of us are a bit pissed off. We're like, why? You know, why would you do that to yourself, to your family, to your wife? You know, so we're all a bit upset with Yudhishthir. And I think that his character is definitely one of the more gray ones that we see. He's held up, obviously because of his father, you know, as the model of justice, of dharma, of all of that kind of stuff, you know, of dharma. Um, But actually, I think when you look into the Mahabharata and you see Yudhishthir's personality, I think you realize that he was kind of one dimensional in many ways. He was somebody who was given a very clear idea of what was expected of him as the oldest son. And he had to fulfill that destiny, whether it was Kunti, whether it was Vidur, whether it was, Drona, whoever kind of instilled those values into him, it was very clearly spelled out. And he went along with everything, and that sort of formed his belief system, which, in my opinion, and actually, if you look through the Mahabharata as well, um, we know that we understand that dharma isn't a one dimensional thing, especially when you have Krishna coming in and talking about dharma to all the characters and stuff like that, talking to Arjun on the battlefield. You realize dharma is a very multifaceted, multidimensional thing. I don't think Yudhishthira gets that. And so I think for his journey, I thought it was important and a sort of organic progression of his journey for him to experiment with dharma and for him to sort of try and challenge his previous notions about it. So that would be the next step for him, I guess. And it sounds so horrible and arrogant for me to say I can decide what Yudhishthir's next step should be in his journey. It's horrible to say that. But I think organically, the ending of the Mahabharata lends himself because he's done everything else. He's been the king. He's finished with his grihas. Now he's gone into sannyas. What is left? And I thought that experimenting with her would be the next step.
No, I mean, you beautifully, and you tell the story so beautifully. We would love to hear one of your favorite stories from the epic.
Oh, so many. Where do I start? I love the story of Ganga, you
Okay.
know, because she's a badass. She's a complete badass. She comes down to earth and she totally tells everyone what to do, and she doesn't let her husband stop her. So I like these kinds of stories of strong women. Even her successor Satyavati was a political animal, you know and she got her illegitimate child to basically sire the entire dynasty, and her legitimate child to become king, and manipulated everybody around her husband, her son, her first son, her second son, her daughter-in-laws, her grandchildren. So she was an amazing political animal. I love that about her. Kunti was very smart as well. I love the stories with her, the way she negotiated the royal dynamics and the family dynamics, the way she protected her children, her sons, throughout their childhood until they got to a point where they could fight for themselves. I love the story of when Duryodhan came into the palace of illusions and fell into the water, and Draupadi laughed at him. Man, she had to pay for that, didn't she? But I love the story. So many. I mean, that's unfair. You can't ask me that.
No, but it's good to know because all these stories actually resonate so close to our heart. Now, tell us, when you were reading all of this, what was the most shocking thing that you learned?
Oh,
And even shocked
the
you?
Mahabharat is so full of shocking things. It's unbelievable. I mean, Sikandi fell in love and borrowed a penis from a tree ghost, Yaksha, basically. And obviously Draupadi, the polyandry and the Niyog, where you have the brother siring the sons, and of course all of the various incidents of adultery that happen. As a child, I was not prepared for any of that. So I think that sort of, but it's good to look at these things and sort of imagine another world where these things were okay. And then it's actually quite funny when you think about, if the world that these events sort of happened in, and then later on you come on to the Brahmanic age, right, where they had to justify all of this and wrap it up in sort of as much bhakti as they possibly could, just so that people would accept, like Draupadi got married to five guys because she had made a mistake in her previous life, because she said a wrong sentence. You can see so obviously that these are ways that they're trying to justify and manipulate the story so that it still falls within their moral guidelines. I think that that was quite funny. And so, yeah, all those things shocked me. And then reading the subtext kind of made it funnier, I guess.
No, but you speak very openly about adultery, homosexuality,
Yeah.
premarital sex, meat eating. And so that actually, I mean, of course, stirs up a lot of emotions and a lot of haters come out very much. How do you deal with that?
Oh God, who doesn't have haters these days? I'm sure you have haters. We all have haters, right? We all have people who comment on our posts and go on Twitter and slam you. I mean, when Draupadi Kuru came out in 2016, I had comments that ranged from "this is toilet humor" all the way down to "you deserve to be raped by five men."
This comment I
Um,
don't understand still. This comment that always comes up that you deserve to be raped. This is something that is just not understandable.
Well, I think actually, given our culture, it is quite understandable. The fact that so much of our of masculinity of our culture is wrapped up in the idea of honor. I mean, rape has nothing to do with sexuality. It's about power and patriarchy, and all of that is wrapped up in honor. And rape is just one of the side effects and symptoms, unfortunately, of that. So when people say you deserve to be raped, what they're actually saying is I'm angry with you, and I want to have some kind of power over you.
Or I
It's
want
a
to
hot
humiliate you.
exact or humiliate you in our society where that is the worst thing that could possibly happen to you. But that said, yes, there has been a fair amount of backlash. It was an expected thing. I mean, I didn't expect this to be all hunky dory. Obviously, people are going to be upset. Um, but that said, I genuinely believe that if we all started trying to please everybody, we would never have any kind of art out there. There would never be any books written, movies made, paintings, whatever. We artists would be irrelevant and they would die. So yeah, we all have to keep doing our thing, basically.
No, it's true. And I like the central theme also of your book, which is about destiny, choice, and voice. And really exploring what each person would do if they had any of these factors. Talk to us about that and why these three themes. And if I did get the right three themes.
No, absolutely. I think that destiny was the biggest theme in the Mahabharata. Everybody basically was chasing their destiny, right? And their destiny was something that was preordained and pre-written and pre-decided, and they didn't really have a choice in the matter, right? These days, life is a little bit different for us, right? We have choices. We can shape our own destiny. We are not held back by so many of the expectations and societal boundaries that the characters in the Mahabharata were. And so I think these books are an exercise in individuality and choice and giving the individuals a voice, as you said. So taking these individuals out of their destiny, of their preordained destiny, and allowing them to forge a destiny of their own based on their choices and their unique personalities and voices. Yes, definitely. And so each character comes from a certain place and experience, and based on that, they take the next organic step, which whatever suits them, basically.
And we're quite excited because I think we'll get to hear their voices in this new screen movie, something that's coming out about Ms Draupadi Kuru. I mean, we're going to be seeing them live, Draupadi, Amba, Gandhari, and Kunti come to life on the big screen. So tell us a little bit because that's so exciting.
Well, I'm not actually allowed to tell you anything about that, except that talks are on, yes. And hopefully, fingers crossed, in the future, we should see these characters on screen and in a very contemporary setting. And it's going to be a wonderful juxtaposition, hopefully. And yeah, it's exciting. I'm super excited about it.
So I have to ask you this. So who do you see as Draupadi and who do you see as Kunti?
You can't ask me that. You really can't. I don't know. I'm an author. I have made up these faces in my head with every cartoon and every B.R. Chopra episode that I've ever seen. I've made up these characters in my head. You can't ask me to then say pick a real life person. They're too big in my head, you know. But I think that whoever it is, I hope that Draupadi especially has that amazing charisma that the character has, you know, in the epic. I think charisma is a big one for Draupadi. And Kunti, even though she's not the most vivacious or a charismatic person, she has this quiet strength. So yeah, so I hope that whoever plays her, or them, will have the necessary characteristics. I think that's more important to me than the actual look.
Now, I got to ask you this. You're a documentary filmmaker. Did you ever think that you wanted to direct this yourself? Did you want to make this film yourself?
Did I want to direct this particular one myself?
Yes.
No,
Yes.
because I think that there are much better people out there who would actually do justice to this much more than me. But yes, in my career, I have been at that stage. I think, like every documentary filmmaker, of, you know, we all go through that phase of I want to direct a feature film. And I even wrote one many years ago that I wanted to direct, and it was a very sweet story. Um, but yeah, filmmaking is complex, and there's so many people involved, and there's so much money involved, you know. And so I kind of backed out of that and went back to documentary filmmaking because I wasn't ready for that world, and I don't think I ever will be ready to direct a feature film. I think I'm going to stick to authoring and writing screenplays, and consulting is what they call it.
But I love the sentence that I read. You said that you write visually and believe in show, don't tell. Please tell us a little bit more about your writing style.
It comes from, I think, a film background. You know, in film, that's the first thing that we're taught. In school, we're taught that, you know, show, don't tell. So if a character is feeling an emotion, right, how does that emotion translate into action, right? So, for example, if a character like Bhim is feeling upset at Amit Sharma, for instance, because and he's about to lose his temper, and we know from his background that he's a very short tempered person. He has a tendency to be violent, you know. How is he gonna uh, act or behave, right? It's easy to say, oh, Bhim was really angry. Well, sure, Bhim was really angry, yeah, but it's much more effective for me to say Bhim clenched his fist and jumped out of the window and grabbed someone's collar. Then you understand that he's angry. You know what I mean? So it's showing, not telling. The author tries to play as little a part in that. The voice of God sort of plays less of a part in that. And the characters take center stage, their actions take center stage. So that's what I mean by show, don't tell. And I've tried to incorporate that into all of my books, so that, and then a lot of people tell me that my books have a very film like feel, cinematic feel to them. And I think it's because I come from that, you know. That's my starting point.
I was going to ask that as my next question because you're a documentary scriptwriter. You have done so many documentaries. How different is it to write a book and write a documentary?
I think the foundations for me are very much the same. I approach a film and a book in much the same way. The characters are developed in much the same way. The scenes are developed in much the same way. The plot is developed in much the same way. That said, whereas the input that goes in and the thought process is very similar, the way it comes out is obviously completely different. So with documentary, obviously you're thinking a lot. With film, not so much documentary, but with film, you're thinking about the physicality of it, you know, the casting and the production and all of that kind of stuff. Whereas books, and then the wonderful thing about books and fiction is that it allows you to completely imagine everything, and sort of play in a sense that, in a way that film doesn't allow you. So yeah, I think I find personally books have given me a much more creative license. And in that sense they're different. Yes, documentary, the rules are stricter. In fiction, anything goes.
And we're now looking forward to, if there's a new book in the coming, who's going to drop from heaven next? Who are the next people that are going to come and visit Earth?
Nobody is going to drop from heaven next, unfortunately. The Kuru series was always planned as a two-part thing. So that's done. My book that I'm writing two, possibly three books. The third one I'm not decided yet. But there are two books that I'm in the middle of right now. One is an alternate history novel where I'll be reimagining hundreds of years of Indian history. So that's been really exciting. It took me a year to research that. So it's going to be very much in the sort of realm as, Man High Castle and Years of Rice and Salt, and those kinds of Fatherland, those kinds of books in that genre. But obviously, given my writing style is fairly different, so it'll be my version of that. And and the other one I'm writing is a out and out rom-com. It's set in Delhi and it's really fun and very heartwarming and all about family and love and all of that. And I sort of came to this book idea because of the pandemic. I've been going back to reading my Georgia Tales and and sort of all the escapist romantic comedy novels out there. And I just felt like, you know what, I think right now all of us need a rom-com.
Yes. But why Delhi? Because even the Kurus are in Delhi. So
The
is there
Kurus
some...
are in Delhi for a very specific reason. Because the Indraprasth, which was the kingdom that the Pandavas ruled for many, many years, right? That was, it's obviously been debated a lot, right? Where was the original Indraprasth? And you're talking mythology versus history versus archaeology, etc., right? So none of these things match up. However, that said, the geographical description of Indraprasth matches archaeological evidence found under the Purana Killa in Delhi.
Yes.
So I just decided to run with that. And if Indraprasth is old Delhi, basically Purana Killa, that area, and in the book, Draupadi is asked by Narad Muni, where do you want to go on earth? And she says Indraprasth, which leads her to Delhi. So that was kind of the thinking. Whereas the rom-com that I'm writing right now, which is very Delhi, right? That is because I've lived in Delhi. I've lived there. I worked there. I know Delhi really well. I've lived in and worked in Mumbai as well, but Delhi is sort of my home. It's home, so I know it.
No, we also love Delhi. So
Yes.
now my last question as we are wrapping up, tell us, why should one read these books? From your own words, we'd love to understand.
Oh, why should we read them? Well, if you're a fan of mythology and you're sick of all the retellings out there, because there are a lot of retellings out there, and some are good and some are not good, um, and you always kind of wanted something different for these characters, or you always thought about these characters in greater detail or beyond the story. Or even if you just like mythology, or if you're a fan of world mythology, or if you like rom-coms, or if you like contemporary novels, I don't know, or fantasy or time travel. I think that these books are a good combination of all of them, all of that stuff above. And I think for us, Hindu mythology has always been something that's been very fluid. It's adapted to the ages that it's sort of existed in. And I'm hoping that as a feminist and as a modern woman, that going forward, these are the kinds of adaptations that we're going to see. And the next generation is going to grow up with, and they're going to have a totally different point of view about the women out there. And women in mythology, and we deserve to have that. We deserve to have these new narratives. So read it to support Hindu mythology, and read it to support women, and read it to support me.
And I would just say my one word, read it because they're fun. So
And
thank
they're
you,
fun.
Trisha, for joining us, because that was an exciting, exciting conversation. Really looking forward to what you're writing next.
Thank you very much, Sukirti. Thanks for having me.